everybody. Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. Today's guest is Ryan Walters. He is the Oklahoma Superintendent of Public Education. If his name sounds familiar, that's because you've probably heard of him. He has been just incredible. He has been a vocal critic of critical race theory. He's been a vocal critic of gender ideology in schools, of the pornographic books in schools, of teacher unions in Oklahoma. I would describe him as Oklahoma's top, and really one of the nation's top culture warriors. One thing that he is doing right now, which shows his tenacity and grit, he's suing the Biden administration and the Department of Education. Really wonderful things. He is also the first person, the first elected official who said he will not comply, Oklahoma will not comply to Joe Biden's illegal administrative rewrite of Title IX. That right there should tell you everything about his leadership and unwillingness to comply. Really wonderful stuff. So check out the interview here with Ryan Walters. I am so glad you're able to join the Gains for Girls podcast. Before we get into anything, I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role as Superintendent of Public Schools in Oklahoma looks like.
Well, thank you so much for having me today, Riley. Hey, my daughters are going to be so thrilled I'm on the show today. I am a former history teacher. I taught high school history. I was a tennis coach and a basketball coach. I ran for this position to be the superintendent of the state of Oklahoma. So I oversee all of our schools. So the enforcement of our rules, laws of our school districts are part of my power here in the state. I ran for this office because I heard from parents that were so frustrated, right? They were so frustrated that we were in a conservative state. We didn't have school choice. We had boys playing girls sports. We had critical race theory and DEI in our school. So I ran for this office. I was able to win despite the best efforts of the teachers unions. And now it's been full steam ahead with a blueprint for states on here's how you do conservative reform in education. We have been very proud of our track record. We're very proud of our successes. And so here in Oklahoma, we're going to keep fighting for parents over bureaucrats. We're going to keep putting parents in charge and running the teachers unions out of our schools. And again, here we still have common sense like most of the country does to understand that boys are boys, girls are girls, and we're not going to allow a woke agenda to overtake our classrooms.
Thank goodness for it. Speaking of all of the boys are boys, girls are girls, I was so impressed and grateful. I saw a video of you. Of course, you came out strong against the Biden administration's rewrite of Title IX. You were really the first person to basically reject these guidelines and these implications of this proposal. You vowed that. And after that, after your leadership, we saw other governors. We saw Governor Abbott, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, other elected officials basically pledge the same willingness to not comply. And so what led you to make that statement and ultimately take that action?
Well, ultimately, when we looked at it in real time, we had an understanding that it was really be a three-pronged approach. Number one, we wanted to give districts clarity right from the outset. You don't obey this edict from the Biden administration. This is unlawful. It goes against common sense. And so our first thing that we did immediately was respond and had talked about it in our board meeting. No district will comply. So we sent an email out to every district, said this is direct guidance from the State Department of Education not to comply with the Biden administration. So again, then we had superintendents reaching out to us going, thank you. We were worried, could the federal government sue us directly? Could they come after us? Well, we're standing in between Joe Biden's radical regime and our local schools. So they were very thankful that we gave them legal guidance, a legal memo right from the outset that said, Oklahoma will not comply, and districts, you will not comply with this edict. Number two, we were the first State Department, and we're still the only one, the State Department of Education. We sued the Biden administration. So we sued them directly. I know other states have sued, but it was so important for us to sue as a Department of Education because there's really two things here. Number one, Riley, and I know you know this, they broke their own rules to pass this Title IX rewrite. So, first of all, it's just amazing what Democrats are willing to do to push this woke agenda onto our kids. They break their own rules inside their agency on rulemaking. So they broke their own rules to do it, number one. Number two, we point to the fact that they don't have the legal authority to rewrite Title IX in the way that they did. So we were the first State Department of Education to sue them on that front. And then third, something that I've been talking about a lot, and boy, I've heard you out there talking about it. I've heard President Trump has made this campaign promise, which I believe is so important. We've got to abolish the Department of Education. And that's one of the things we've tried to be very vocal about. We don't need a Department of Education. This is what they do. They come in and they try to socially engineer our states and our schools. They try to weaponize the federal government's power against parents. And it's time to do away with it once and for all. And that's where, we've been very clear here. Hey, we need to have President Trump back in the White House to get that done so that we can finally give education back to the states where it belongs. And then the states should do like we do here in Oklahoma. And that's give all the education power back to the parents where God gave that power originally.
Amazing. Yeah, you mentioned the Biden administration breaking their own law, which is almost comical given the irony, considering everything going on, the travesty that has befallen our justice system recently with President Trump. You've got Joe Biden tweeting, "No one is above the law." I guess if by no one, he means his political opponents, because you're right. Whether it's this issue, whether it's the student debt relief, even thinking he's above the highest courts, the Supreme Courts, and ultimately they ruled that this exceeded his authority, but to which he blatantly said he did not care. So the irony is almost comical. And yeah, this I guess is kind of just a question out of ignorance. If the Department of Education at the federal level were to be abolished, I mean, would this threaten like your position at a state level?
Yeah, no, great question. And so really if you abolish the federal Department of Education, what you would do is then any kind of funding that you would want to go to schools, that needs to go directly to parents. Don't have it go through an apparatus that then can put all these requirements on there. The parents should really have the education funding and let them take it to a private school, home school, charter school, however they wish, and let states determine how to oversee their schools. So again, a position like mine, look, I love the fact I'm elected by the people. I'm answerable to the people of Oklahoma. So, parents reach out to us directly. We have hotlines for parents who feel like their kids are not being, their parents' rights are being, stepped over, or that if they feel like there is a boy and a girl's sport, or if they see that CRT is being pushed on their kids, or they see their kids are being mistreated in a school and being indoctrinated, they can reach out directly to our agency and we can go in there and make sure that our schools are obeying the law. So we've gone into certain districts and said, listen, we found you breaking state law, so we're going to threaten your accreditation. Teachers and administrators, if you say we're going to blatantly disregard the law and do illegal activity with kids, we're going to take your license away from you. We're not going to allow that type of behavior. So it really empowers states to give power back to families, but also to figure out their own way to make sure that their schools are following the law. The federal government, all they've continued to do, and I want to take even one step back, Riley, if I can.
Please.
The Federal Department of Education. Remember the Common Core fight when the Federal Department of Education decided that they knew a better way to do math, and it was this super convoluted, everyone hated it. That came from the Federal Department of Education. Critical race theory came from the Federal Department of Education. DEI came from the Federal Department of Education. And so you continue to see this. Well, how do we get this into schools? Well, let's use the federal government, not only the bureaucracy to enforce it, but also federal funds, and put all these strings attached to them, and then threaten the states to jerk those funds back if they don't abide by our edicts. And so it's a very simple process to abolish that department. It's also, you've got the agency, and then you have the local implementation of that agency, which is the teachers' unions. So they work together. Remember when they shut down schools, it was absolutely a coordinated effort. We saw that when their emails were leaked out, that the teachers' unions had the Department of Education help advocate to shut down schools across the country. That's where they tried to work. They tried to work through that bureaucracy. And again, without President Trump in the White House, you're going to continue to see that agency run amok.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you for that explanation. Again, that was pretty solely out of ignorance there. But there's no doubt that your job has been tough. I've seen videos of you getting protested, people at the State House, the state capitol, with signs and flags, and of course, hurling the most obscene, heinous, profane things your way, your family's way even. We saw what happened at an Oklahoma public school that garnered national attention surrounding Next Benedict. This is, of course, a non-binary, I believe a 10th grader, who tragically committed suicide. This is something that you got blamed for. This is something that I got blamed for. Anyone who opposes or even dares to question the gender ideology movement got blamed for this. So I wanted to get your take, in your opinion, what is the real root of the problem here?
It's that one was one of the more sickening things that I've dealt with as the state superintendent here is, I remember, we had the suicide. It's always just such a tragedy when you lose a child here in our schools. It was a tragedy. About a week had gone by. We'd offer school, counselors to go to the school, help all the students, the families. And then we saw some radical left-wing blogger come out and say, well, actually, you know why? This student committed suicide because of conservatives in the state. They name me, they name you. And they start ratcheting up. This is because of conservatives banning boys in the girls' bathrooms, all of these type of things. They lie about a fight that happened in the school, claim that it happened in a certain way and that the kid was, the next Benedict was killed in the bathroom. Well, that's not what happened at all. So they start this lie out. And they start trying to blame all of us. And we're sitting here, we see the suicide notes. We see what Nex had said. We see the issue. And it had nothing to do with anything they're talking about. The child struggled. Had a real struggle their whole life. And it was dealing with the family. It was dealing with accusations around issues with the father. And so you had all of this and you're going, these left-wing fanatics could care less about the kid. They could care less about how the child died. They could care less about the actual causes of it. They just want to blame conservatives. It was a pure political attack. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in our state. I'm trying to remember the name of the group now. It's an LGBTQ plus group to have ads targeting me saying I killed this student in our state. But you see how radical these groups are to fight for their gender ideology and to push it on kids. They could care less about the death of a child. They wanted to make it a political talking point rather than actually trying to understand what happened there. And again, it's sick, but it's a great example of what we see in the country today from the radical left. They will do anything to push their agenda. They will imprison President Trump. They will lie about the death of a child. I've seen the physical attacks on you, Riley. It's just sickening to watch them try to bully and intimidate you the way that they do. But the left will there's no bounds to which they won't go to get their way. And this is why this election is so important this fall. But we've got to have conservatives mobilized. We've got to push back on this because if you back down to a woke mob, they just get more and more violent, more and more unruly. We have to win this war.
No doubt about that. And yeah, you're right. It's not just this topic. It is any topic. It's COVID. We saw the Fauci hearing recently. It's the border stuff. It's every topic. They will find a way to vilify their political opponents, which is sad. As young people watching this country be polarized in the way that it is, it's incredibly disheartening. But earlier this year, you brought on Kaya. Kaya Rychik is she's of course the creator of Libs of TikTok, which does a perfect job in, really just holding up a mirror to the insanity of the left. She does nothing else other than amplify their own words, their own intersectional language and actions. You both are constantly accused of bomb threats and different things. Kaya, quite literally, hundreds and hundreds of them all across the nation. And so I wanted to ask you, I think this is a wonderful move, given her platform, given the impact that she is able to have. But I wanted to ask you, what led you to do this? And do you have any regrets given the backlash that it's certain that you face for doing this?
Well, honestly, and I know you've seen this too. The more the left reacts and the backlash, it more tells me that I'm over the target and I made the right move, actually. So the way that they responded to that just was a better indicator that was the right thing to do. But Kaya had been helping me for, I think, nearly a year before the appointment. She would send me information on teachers. And again, the brilliance of her platform to go, this is the video of them saying this, not me saying it about them saying it themselves. And we were able to take teachers' certificates, get them out of the classrooms that were pushing, one of them was pushing anarchist propaganda on kids. We had several grooming and sexual assaults that she was able to find for us. So we were very, very enthusiastically excited to bring her on board to help us continue to uncover indoctrination in the classroom, radical leftists pushing an agenda on our kids. And so, yeah, the left, the teachers union, boy, they lost it, Riley. I mean, we had her, do a video announcement when we brought her on board, and oh my goodness, they were losing their mind at the board meeting. They were out protesting, and we keep coming back to, we want to be the most transparent state in the country. We've got a lady here who has done more to uncover what's going on in the classroom than anybody else in the country. Of course, we would be thrilled to have her on board, to have her helping us continue to uncover what's going on in the classrooms. And she's just been tremendous. She's been a tremendous partner there, and we couldn't be more proud of that partnership with her.
Yeah, you guys have had some real success, which is a lot more than what other states can say. But yeah, to your point, she's been successful in states across the country, really. Speaking of, Oklahoma, you mentioned transparency here. I hear all the time. I live in a red state. I'm from Tennessee. I'm very blessed to be from Tennessee, where things aren't as bad as other states, or at least so people think. People think a lot of this stuff is happening in California or New York or Michigan or Maine or these states that tend to be pretty progressive. But in your experience, I wanted to kind of get your perspective. I think there's a lot of complacency from people in red states, complacency that's ultimately led us to where we are now, scratching our heads saying, how have we reached the point where people really think, and it's being implemented, that boys can be girls and girls can be boys. And so do you think states like Oklahoma, like Tennessee, like Florida, are susceptible to this madness at the same rate, or even sometimes I would argue at a higher rate than a lot of these blue states?
Riley, look, I couldn't agree more. I just want to tell your audience, I know that they see all that you're doing on the national level in states across the country. Here in Oklahoma, we would not have had our Save Women's Sports Act if it wasn't for you. If you wouldn't have come here and really used your platform to help us get that across the finish line, I don't think it would have happened. And so you see, even in a red state, every one of the Oklahoma's counties voted for President Trump in the last 2 elections. Every one of our counties did. And yet we have had trouble getting school choice across the finish line. We finally did that. We've had issues banning several of the critical race theory, several of these elements in our classrooms. And what you see here is what I have encountered is, in a red state, what your teachers unions do is they go in and they try to buy people out from the Republican Party. Hey, they know that the Democrats probably aren't going to have near as much sway, obviously, in a red state. So we're going to go buy off a few influential Republicans, and we're going to block reforms. We're going to take over the State Department of Education. Riley, when I came on board, I had to get 130 bureaucrats out of this agency that were complete leftists that were here to undermine the work we were doing. So we had to get 130 folks out of here to keep the work going forward, and to make sure that what we're doing is answering the parents first, and not just not being a rubber stamp for teachers unions. But in red states, what you see is they take over the state departments of education, they take over all these boards and commissions, and then they buy off Republicans in influential places. And so they do a lot of these things where they're half measures, they don't implement law the way that they should. I mean, that's kind of, George Soros started doing this years ago. He was getting involved in all these local DA races and school board races. And I remember, years ago, people were going, well, what's he doing? Well, now it's very obvious, right? You can pass whatever law you want, but if you control the DAs, they're not going to enforce a law they don't like, or they're going to weaponize their offices against conservatives. If you have all the local school boards, they can sit here and pull a school district all the way to the left, and the community cannot even know, they don't even know what happens. And a few years go by, and they've got a bunch of radical leftists in their school district. So it's so important that red states lead on these issues. I'm under attack right now, Riley. I've got a Republican here in the state of Oklahoma that's attacking me and trying to make sure my agency can't tell the public what's going on in the schools. He didn't like when I was showing parents the pornography that we found in schools. So now he's trying to ban me from being able to talk about these things publicly, a Republican. It is amazing to see that type of activity in red states, but this is where we've got to play offense. We should be very aggressive in our agenda. We should move the ball forward, because the conservative agenda is what's best for kids, is what's best for families, is what's best for communities, because we understand the more that we can strengthen the family unit, the more that we can protect that, the more that we can put mom and dad in charge of their kids and their kids' education, the better off they'll be. The more we protect their religious liberties so they can talk about their faith with their kid and express their religious beliefs, These are things that we know. They're universal. They stand the test of time. They lead to a huge positive impact for communities. And it's a conservative agenda that we shouldn't be compromising on. We should be very aggressive on moving the ball forward.
100%. Yeah. Both, I think the issues that you and I fight for, they shouldn't be partisan issues. This isn't something that I believe only conservatives should be fighting for. As you said, it really is universal. Who wouldn't want parental rights? Who wouldn't want the safeguarding of children, or in the case of a lot of these, issues in sports, women's rights? Who wouldn't want those things? But what I have noticed is that Republicans, or at least people with an R by their name, can be our own worst enemies, which is a sad reality. But nonetheless, you continue to fight, you continue to push, I would argue pretty fearlessly. And if not fearless, certainly courageously. And so, why do you continue despite the constant backlash and the threats that you face, and again, that your family faces?
Riley, it meant a lot to me when you were here. We signed our Save Women's Sports bill. I brought my daughters with me, Violet and Ella, who, by the way, are going to be so thrilled that I'm on the show today. They love you. They are huge fans of the work you're doing. I look at them, that they're both tennis players. They're young, 10 and 6. So, they're young, but we've got them in these tennis lessons. And, they're working hard. They want to be good tennis players. And, you think about what the left would do to them if they had their way. First of all, they would tell them that, you might not be girls, you might be boys, and confuse them in this way that could send their life on a terrible, terrible path. Number two, you look at it and say, so the left is willing to allow these girls to work hard their whole life to be really good at a sport, all the dedication, all those life lessons that come from athletic activities, to show up at the state tournament and have a boy say, well, today I think I'm a girl. I wasn't going to do very well in the boys event, but if I switch genders here, I might have a chance, and jump in there and beat them at the state tennis tournament. How do you live in a society where you allow that to happen? When you're a dad, when you're a mom, and you see your kids going through this, you got to fight for them. You have to fight for this next generation. And for far too long, adults have allowed this to happen to our kids. And now we're turning around and going, we've allowed the left to control our schools, our education system. It's not right. We should be empowering our kids with a good education. We should be standing for common sense. We should be the great country that we were, where we were able to tell kids, hey, you as an individual, hey, if you keep good faith, you listen to what's right, listen to God, you listen to what's right, you dedicate yourself to something, you work hard, you try to do the right thing. Look, life can be incredible for you. You can have such a positive influence on the world around you, the people around you. You have a great family. These are the type of things you want kids to hear about. And instead, we've allowed leftists to take over our states, our schools, our country. And so that's what continues to motivate me, is to look at my kids. I've got two boys too, two younger boys. And with 4 kids, you look at them and you go, look, I want to know that I've done all I can to make Oklahoma, make the country a better place for them. And then as I get to meet parents all over the state, it was an honor to run for this office. I went to all 77 counties, met all these parents. Hey, you want them to be able to tell their kids, hey, kids, this state's going to be better for you. We're going to keep fighting for you. We want it to be encouraging for them. So that's why I keep doing it, is for all those parents, all the kids out there, all the families. You want to make Oklahoma and the country a better place.
No doubt. I had the honor of meeting your family. You have just the cutest family. Your wife is beautiful. Your kids are just adorable. So you're certainly blessed. And I would imagine that's a big part and why you push back in the way that you do. And so, Ryan, I'm so grateful for you. I wish every state had a superintendent like you. The world would be a better place. The country would be a better place. And so we're grateful for you. We are on your side 100%. But in the meantime, keep pushing and we'll keep amplifying.
Well, Riley, that means so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show today. And I'm going to tell you, I can't thank you enough for the work you're doing. You are one of the most powerful individuals across the country. You have led for our young girls. You have meant so much to the state of Oklahoma, but for so many parents and kids across the country. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it so much. And I know I'm speaking for millions of people across the country that would love to say thank you for all that you're doing for the country.
If every state had a superintendent like Ryan, the world, not even just the country, the world would be a better place. Thank you guys for checking out the interview. Make sure you like and subscribe anywhere where you get your podcasts. You can check us out at OutKick.com. We will see you again next week. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. The fight to save women's sports and restore common sense is far from over, and I continue the conversation every week. So make sure to catch more content over here and subscribe to OutKick so you don't miss a thing.